Good morning. This is a reflection on lesson 192 in A Course in Miracles. It says, I have a function God would have me fill. I have a function God would have me fill. And really that function is what they're calling forgiveness. And I still think of forgiveness as acceptance for all that is. Acceptance of the other person, acceptance of me, self. Just acceptance that it's like an equanimity. That's another word for it. And because we're not condemning. So I love to go back to that very first lesson on forgiveness. One of the very first in the book was about how forgiveness and acceptance are kind of interchangeable words. And we can't and it said something like, you don't even need forgiveness if you don't first condemn yourself for something, condemn other people, judgments, all of that. So to have forgiveness is to have acceptance for everything and release other people from these perceptions of the should, like it should be that way and it's not. And that's what keeps us in these states of comparison, frustration, anger, helplessness, hopelessness, all those things. But coming into acceptance for all, true acceptance, like allowing. I love the word allowing. I'm just going to allow. I'm not going to inject a should here. So all that aside, this lesson seems to be like another, like reiterate this idea of forgiveness. And then it said something new this time that I really liked, because I think about this now in daily life. Like I'll go through periods of like feeling like there's no resistance here, there's no push pull of like, oh, something should be that way and it's not, or I go through these long periods of like accepting everything where there's nothing bubbling up to be addressed. There's like, okay, what's the next thing to heal? What's the next shadow work to be done? It's like, and then so they'll go through these periods where there's just isness, and then something will bubble up, and I'm like, oh, finally, thank you. Like there's something to be done here. There's something to be released, because that's just the part of, I guess, the phase or whatever I'm in, even though there aren't phases. So I think about that a lot, like, oh, yay, there's something else to be worked on, right? And so this one, I like what it said. It says, like, to hold no one prisoner and release the bindings, release yourself, release others from being prisoners. And it says, every time you feel a stab of anger, realize you hold a sword above your head, and it will fall or be averted as you choose to be condemned or free. So if you're still condemning yourself, you're basically hurting yourself. Or if you do something to avert that, you're free. So it says, thus does each one who seems to tempt you to be angry represent your savior from the prison house of death. So what that means is, all those words, is you see somebody, you're triggered, and now you can say, it says, and so you owe him thanks instead of pain. So it's like, if we can be in that space of, okay, what's the next thing to work on? And that's, for me, that's been a long road coming. At first it might have been like, oh God, one more thing, and now it's like, oh yay, the next thing. And so we can owe people, like we can have this gratitude for them being presented with something that's reflecting something wrong inside that I feel needs to be released. Like it's not part of me anymore. That's why it came up to like trigger me in some way when I had this interaction with this other person, is what it's saying. So you can thank the other person and say, oh my God, thank you for like all this annoyance I feel. It's something you're doing, which is really Like, I love that because there could be somebody who's just doing something. They're saying something online, whatever. Half the people are like, oh, that makes me so mad. I feel like I gotta respond. And the other half are like, yeah, I agree with that. Good job. And they move along. Or they share that good job and they move along. And it's like, what's the difference? That same person is triggering this group of people, not triggering that group. And I think about that a lot because it's like what's the difference? The difference is each individual in those two groups of people. Like, why is that behavior triggering me? Why is what they said making me mad? And so obviously the shadow work is like inquiry into, well, what is that in me? Usually goes back to something maybe a long time ago, or when at a point when we first felt wounded and no one was there to comfort us, or whatever it is. It usually goes back to some fear. And so now it's like, instead of like, oh, that person didn't do something and it frustrated me at work or whatever. And then it can be like, oh my God, yes, I feel something. I feel a resistance inside. Now it's time to get rid of it. Yeah. Thank you, kind sir. So I really like that a lot. Anyway, that's because this lesson was just like more of the same in terms of reiterating our only function here is to accept all that is, because there's nothing to be done. It's funny because they use the word function as if like that's a mechanism of doing. And it's like, actually, there's nothing to be done. And that's what true acceptance is. And allowing is truly not inserting resistance, not doing anything. So, because it's kind of hard, like the doing, it seems to be always adding resistance. Even if your doing is like, oh, I just gotta release this, I gotta let go. And it's like, how can letting go be a doing action? Letting go is like the lack of doing, and it's allowing, right? So I think of that paradox too. Like, to release is actually to release tension. Okay, that's all. Thanks. Bye.